Hey everyone, welcome back. In this video, we're going to learn how to assemble the T9 Automoblox car. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we want to do is create what's called a subassembly. And a subassembly is a smaller assembly within a larger assembly. So if you have a product that is comprised of a large quantity of parts, it's a good idea to break them down into smaller subassemblies. And for this particular assignment, we're going to create three sub-assemblies and then eventually assemble them into one final assembly. So let's go ahead and get started. Come on up here to File. Let's do a new design. And we're going to call this, let's go ahead and save it first. And we're going to call this T9 Rear End Sub Assembly. Go ahead and select Save. So notice I have all of my Automoblox parts over here in my data panel. So since we're working on the rear end, I'm going to go ahead now and find my rear end part. I'm going to right click, insert into current design. Okay, I'm going to position it and so it looks something like that. It's probably pretty good. I'm going to select OK. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to right click and let's ground that so it does not move. There it is. And when I do assemblies, I like to bring in one part at a time. So I'm going to now bring in my axles here. So I'm going to right click, insert into current design. And I'm going to move it to a favorable position. And I'm going to rotate it around so it looks something like that. I'm going to select OK. That's in a pretty good spot. And I want my axle to go right into that hole. So to do that, okay, well, we got to think about, we're going to use what's called a rigid constraint, which has 0 degrees of freedom. Okay, so, and then we got to think about which parts mate with our T9 bed here. So I'm going to go to Assemble and Joint. Make sure it selects a rigid constraint. Okay, and I think, oh, I want that part right there to be sort of matched up with, well, that part right there. Okay, go ahead and select OK. Let's repeat the process now for the other side. Right click, insert into current design. Once again, move it into a favorable position here. Something like that. Looks pretty good. Select OK. Okay, come on up to Assemble, select Joint, and by default, it's going to select the last joint we use, which is a rigid constraint, which is what we want. So once again, I know that this circle right here will match up with, well, this circle right here. I'm going to go ahead and select OK. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and put my wheel on my axle. So I'm going to scroll down, right click on my wheel, and insert it into current design. I'm going to move it out over here, hit OK. I'm going to go to Assemble, Joint, and this time we want to select a revolute so our wheel rotates freely on the axle here. So I'm going to zoom in, and I know that this line right here, okay, matches up with, okay, that line right there, or that circle, okay, and there we go. Select OK. Let's go ahead and repeat the process for the other wheel. Right click, insert into current design. Okay, I'm going to move it out here. There we go. Come back to Assemble, select Joint, select that line, rotate around, and select that line. Select OK. Okay. And now if you move your, grab your mouse, you can move your wheel around. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and put the tires on my wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and my tire, right click, insert into current design. Move it out here. Okay, something like that, maybe a little farther out. Select OK. Okay, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to use a rigid constraint now because I don't want my tire rotating. So I'm going to come to Motion, select Rigid, come back to Position, and I'm going to select that circle to that circle. And there we go. Let's do the same for the other wheel. Right click, insert into current design. OK. Assemble, joint, right there, and right there. Select OK. Now let's go ahead and insert our one block socket. So I'm going to right click, insert into current design, move it out over here, select OK. All right, we're going to come back to assemble. We want a rigid joint again, and I know that, okay, this center point right here will correspond to that center point right there. Okay, go ahead and select OK. Now we're going to go ahead and insert our connector piece. So I'm going to right click, insert into current design. Okay, move that guy out and in position. Select OK. Come back to assemble, go to joint, and I know that that center position right there needs to match up with, well, that center position right there. Select OK. Okay. All right, so that'll do it for our T9 rear end subassembly. Go ahead and save it when you're done. Now that we're done with our rear end though, now we can start our second subassembly. We're going to come on up, we're going to do a new design, and we're going to call it, let's save it, and we're going to call it T9 front end sub assembly. Go ahead and select save. So we're basically going to repeat the same process, but now we're going to do it for the front end. So I'm going to grab my front end, I'm going to right click, insert into current design. I'm going to kind of flip it over, select OK. Make sure you ground it so it doesn't move, it's sort of locked in place there. And then I'm going to go ahead and start building around this piece right here. So once again, I'm going to get my axles, go ahead and insert into current design. Select OK, go to assemble, joint, select that one. We know it matches up with that point right there. Select OK. Rotate our front end around, right click, insert into current design. Move this guy out over here, select OK. Okay, go to assemble, joint, cancel that, assemble, joint. Select OK. Let's put our wheels on there. Go to assemble. This time we want a revolute joint. Remember, we want our wheels to spin, right? So we're going to select this circle, and we know it goes right there. Select OK. Rotate our subassembly around to the other side. I'm going to right click on my wheel again and insert it into the current design. Once again, I'm going to sort of rotate it, as always, in a good position here. Select OK. Come on up to assemble, joint. We want that circle with that circle. Go ahead and select OK. Now let's go ahead and put our wheels on, or our tires on, I should say. Let's right click, insert into current design. Move that guy out here, select OK, go to assemble. We want a rigid joint this time, so come on over here, select rigid. Okay, we'll select that edge. We know it matches up with that edge. Okay, select OK. Flip our part around and do the other side. Assemble joint right there and right there. Looks good. Now let's go ahead and put our 2-block socket in there. So I'm going to right click, insert into current design. So I'm going to rotate that guy out, move this around, flip it over like such. That's pretty good. Go ahead and select OK. Coming up to assemble, we're going to do another rigid joint. And I know that this center position right here matches up with that center position right there. Select OK. Okay, and then let's go ahead now and bring in our connector piece. Right click, insert into current design. That looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and select OK. Alright, so let's go ahead and commit to assemble, select joint, find that center point. Should match up with, well, let's see, that center point right there. Looks pretty good. Select OK. Okay, and that'll do it for your front end subassembly. Make sure you select save. So now let's go ahead and create our third subassembly. Let's come up to File, New Design. We'll save it as a T9 passenger section subassembly. Go ahead and select save. So now let's go ahead and right click and insert our passenger section into our current design. I'm going to rotate it over like so. Select OK. So be careful when you're doing the passenger section because the back end of the passenger section has a distance of 0.81. So this is the back, okay, and the front I believe is like 0.75. Let's see. Yep, so this is the front. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select close. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and right click and ground my passenger section, and now I'm going to enter my 1-block socket again. So I'm going to right click, insert into current design, select OK. Let's come on up to assemble and joint. Make sure you got a rigid joint and find this center part. Let's see here. Select there and then select there. Okay, and it's kind of too far back, so I'm going to move it out just a little bit so it's something like, well, like that. Okay, so use your arrow and pull it out so that both sides are flush here. Alright, go ahead and select OK. Now let's go ahead and turn our part around and do the 2-block socket here. So I'm going to right click, insert into current design. Rotate it over. Pull it out. Looks pretty good. Select OK. Assemble, joint, rigid joint. Come on over here. That point corresponds to that point to that point. Okay, looks pretty good. Go ahead and select OK. Now let's go ahead and insert our passenger base. So I'm going to right click, insert into current design. Okay, and we want to make sure that our star and our triangle are facing forward. So I'm going to rotate this up like so. And that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move it up a little bit more so I have some room to see here and click OK. Now I'm going to come around and I'm going to inspect this distance right here from this line to that line, and I got about 0.29 inches. That's okay, so keep that distance in mind. I'm going to hit close. I'm going to come back to assemble joint. We want a rigid joint. Okay, I'm going to rotate my part around. I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to find that center point of this, okay, which is kind of hard to find, but it's right there. Okay, and now I'm going to find the center point on the bottom now. Right there. Okay, now it's too far down, and remember that distance, so we're going to move it up 0.30 or 0.29 works too. Okay, offset it 0.30, select OK. Alright, so now we want to go ahead and insert our windshield here. So I'm going to right click, insert into current design. Kind of flip it up and then rotate it around, then move it up. Okay, that's pretty good. Select OK. Alright, so now let's come up to assemble, and we're going to select join again, and I'm going to find, well, there's a lot of different ways, but I'm going to find this middle point right here on this line, and I know that it matches up with that middle point right there. Okay, select OK. Okay, and there we go. Okay, our passenger section is complete. So when you're done, make sure you save it. So now that we're done with all three of our sub-assemblies, now let's bring in our sub-assemblies to make the complete assembly. So let's come on up here to File, come to New Design. Let's go ahead and save it. We're going to call it T9 Complete Assembly. Go ahead and select a save. All right, I'm going to right click on my passenger section. Okay, first, my passenger section subassembly, I'm going to insert this into the current design. Select OK, that's a pretty good location. I'm going to right click ground so it doesn't move. Now I'm going to go ahead and right click my front end subassembly, and let's insert that guy in there. Okay, and we're going to move it out somewhere in this neck of the woods. Maybe down a little bit. Select OK. Alright, and we're going to go ahead and assemble these two sub-assemblies. So let's go ahead and select joint. Okay, I'm going to find that middle point, and it's going to correspond and match up with that middle point. Go ahead and select OK. And you may have guessed the last thing we want to do now is to bring in our rear end subassembly. So right click, let's insert that into current design. I'm going to move it out over here, move it down, maybe move it back just a little bit, select OK, come on up to assemble, select joint, find that middle point right there, rotate it around. We know that wants to mate up or match up with that point right there. Okay, select OK. And if we did everything correctly, we should have our T9, okay, completely assembled. All right. All right, and the last thing I want to show you is if you don't want to see all of your assembly joints, just come on over here to joints. You can turn off the visibility, come over here to your sub-assemblies, click on the joints, turn off the visibility for all of them. All right, and like I said, don't forget to save. That'll do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.